Today, maybe my mind changes next week.
Well, we are firmly back in Dubai and back into the off season. So now that 2 coffees have been acquired this morning before I go and train, I figured it's worth making a video about how to structure your off season. And one thing I'm doing right now is exactly how you should structure yours. You should be pretty much doing what you did in season with a bit more fuel in the fuel tank. So any of you who watched my contest prep will know that I did steps every day, sometimes here in the mall with the coffee, sometimes outside, but either way I got them done, and that has not changed in the off season. I think one of the worst things you can do, and it's not to say I've made a perfect start to the off season by any means, but one of the worst things you can do is completely go from eating none of the calories and doing all of the cardio to doing none of the cardio and eating all of the calories. That switch is going to be a complete nightmare and something you do not want to be doing. It is going to put you in a really bad position, body composition wise. My feeling is if you can keep a little bit of the activity in, you'll have a slightly better body composition as you put the calories back in. And you'll have a little bit more of a gauge on where your true maintenance is. So certainly for me, I can't say I've been perfect on the nutrition front, but at least I've kept training and I've kept my daily activity high. I even have still 2 cardio sessions a week in at the moment for that reason, just to keep that flux between the energy levels, energy intake and energy output somewhat respectable. That should be your first port of call when setting up your off season, is having some structure between in season and off season and keeping that somewhat the same. Now, from a food output, we can talk about that later, but I'm going to finish these steps, I'm going to drink this coffee and get back on. So let's talk about nutrition in the off season. Like I said, I probably haven't been perfect. Certainly the first few weeks after the season wrapped, I was all over the place with nutrition, but now I've managed to stabilize things a little bit, get back into a routine. And that's one of the things, similar to the expenditure, is really important in the off season. You need a routine. So while I was away, still in Taiwan after the show, for example, not having my routine, not having my usual meals, it was kind of a free-for-all. Whereas at least now I'm back on home soil and back in my environment, my routine kind of stays the same. So again, those of you who are following in season will know I basically would have a typical day of eating in prep for me was a couple of shakes, an omelette, pre-workout would be either Weetabix or oats, post-workout would be either Weetabix or oats, chicken and veggies, and some yogurt and fruit to end the day, something like that. And in season, it's no different. Still having those 2 shakes, that's just an easy way to like crank out 50 to 60 grams of protein and get that boxed off. Very convenient. If you're in a rush in the morning, like I usually am, also good. I still have the omelette. Now, instead of having it plain, I have a little bit of extra cheese or maybe some turkey ham or something like that. And pre-workout, we're still having oats. As you can see here, it's the same as what I was having before. It doesn't look massively appetizing right now, but it's great. And the only difference is there's more of it. And what I might sometimes do as well is add something like maybe peanut butter to it, just to increase the calories. Right now I don't really need that, but again, the meals are the same, the structure is the same, the quantities are what's increasing. So yeah, rather than having 40 to 50 grams of oats for pre-workout, now I can have 75 to 100 grams. My post-workout Weetabix goes from two biscuits to 4, and those small amounts of food just increase. Again, this is very similar to the output idea in that it's going to allow you to really manipulate the variables and keep your body composition somewhat respectable while bringing calories and nutrition and energy availability back up so that you can train. What you need to remember is now we're in the off season, training is going to be the driver of all that new tissue. We just need to fuel it and make sure we can recover. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to also finish up a little bit of some emails and watch for YouTube videos, and then we'll talk about training in the off season in the gym. When it comes to training and moving into the off season, I'm normally a huge advocate of basically milking a program and keeping it roughly the same for as long as you can make progress on it. So for example, in my contest prep season, I barely changed anything apart from when I started losing a lot of body weight, and some of those movements just weren't that good for the leverages. However, going from season into the off season is a really good time to change your routine more wholesale. You're going to have very different work capacity off-season versus in-season. Generally in the off-season you're going to be able to do more volume because you have the energy for a start, but also you have the recoverability to make that off-season happen. Second, you're going to be able to start doing some movements that perhaps you couldn't do before. So, for example, for me, deadlifts are going to be back in a major way. More pressing, more leg pressing. Just because when you have that body weight, you have that cushioning to push those weights, you can rotate those back in. So, the first point of call is when designing your training program for the off-season, reevaluate what you've been doing, think about what you want to improve on, and the first point of call I would make is personally add some more volume back into your program. I'll cover off the next few points after I've done some chest press. So now you've added some volume back into your program. Me, for example, I managed to have a really good look at my programming, and actually the last few years I've been doing kind of the low volume, top set, back off thing. While that might work for a lot of people, I think my volume tolerance is a bit higher. And if you do what you've always done, you get what you always get. So I always did about between 8 to 12 sets per muscle group per week. Now, I think the minimum I'm doing is somewhere around 14, and all the stuff I want to improve, so my top line, delts, upper chest, upper back, is close to 20, or it will be once I build the volume up over time. So to give you an idea of how much my programming's changed, to off season, that's how much. The other thing I've done is I've switched to an A and B week. So I now have a week A, which is a little bit more, the old school people would probably call it functional hypertrophy. So 6 to 10 reps, making a lot of big compound movements, a lot of also just kind of broy movements, a lot of like just no fancy machines, no fancy cables, dumbbell curls, presses, rows, all this kind of stuff is in there. And the week B is more higher reps and a little bit more focused on controlling end ranges, keeping tension on the muscle and things like that. So that's going to be really, really important as well. You can start to be in the off season, be a bit more experimental with your programming because you have both the volume to put more experiments into your program, you have spare volume, so to speak, but also more recovery. So if something is crazy, really fatiguing, oh well, you're eating lots of food and hopefully you're resting appropriately as well. So that's another thing. And the final piece of the puzzle when it comes to training in the off season is to stick at it. One of the things that can happen as you start to lose your shape, start to lose your definition, you also give yourself those, I'll just skip this session, I'll skip that session. When you're eating and you have the calories, it's more important than ever you get those sessions in. This is the time where, your next season's improvements aren't going to be shown in your next 12 weeks of prep. They're going to be shown in this off season. this is the time now where you're going up that ladder. Technically, once you're in prep, for the most part, you're not going to be making any improvements, size-wise, structure-wise. You've climbed the ladder at that point and you're trying to hold on at the top. This is where we can climb and we can get some rungs up and gain on our competition. So that's the way I'm trying to frame it this off-season. Sometimes I've been a little bit lazy, you skip an exercise here, skip an exercise there. This off-season I want to eat and I want to train, and that's definitely the goal. Speaking of training, let's do some more delts. And there we are, back after training and back to just chilling out and resting and recovering. So that is how to set up your off season. So for those of you who just finished up your seasons, obviously Worlds just finished last weekend. That is kind of the end of the natural bodybuilding season. Going into your off season now, these are all things you can think about. These are all things you can consider, and hopefully help you set up a little bit what you're going to do with your expenditure, what you're going to do with your training, and what you're going to do with your nutrition. In the next, more helpful video, I'll go through how to set up and plan for your season in 2026. So hopefully you're giving yourself at least 6 months of off season, but for those of you planning to prep in 2026, you'll also need to think ahead for that as well. Till then, I'll catch you in the next one.